Another shade of grey. While Pakistan stays on FATF list, India must push for justice in cross-border terror attacks. Pakistan's hopes of being let off the Financial Action Task Force grey list were dashed once again, as 39-member grouping decided to keep it on the list and even add more tasks. Eventually, Pakistan missed the mark by one crucial action point out of 27, being judged deficient in prosecuting the senior leadership of UN proscribed terror groups. The FATF works closely with the UN Security Council's listings of terror groups as it evaluates countries on their efforts in anti-money laundering or countering the financing of terrorism. Pakistan's failure to convict JEM chief Masood Azhar and others appeared to tip the balance against it. The Pakistani government publicly protested the decision, pointing out that many countries that had largely completed the action plans handed to them have been delisted in the past. Pakistan, which was on the FATF's increased monitoring list from 2009 to 2015, was taken off the grey list in 2015 in a similar manner. Pakistani leaders have predictably lashed out at India for lobbying for its continued listing, while others have hinted that the decision stems from a refusal to allow the US the use of its bases after America's pullout from Afghanistan. At FATF hearings, the Imran Khan government said it had introduced and amended terror financing laws which have enabled the prosecution of more than 30 UN proscribed leaders and their associates for terror financing. While it is unclear how many of those are actually serving jail time, the convictions and prison terms between 15 to 30 years are a break from the past, when Pakistani authorities would hold these leaders on charges under international pressure and subsequently release them. By making this the sticking point, the FATF, which works on the principle of mutual compliance, has made it clear that Pakistan must complete the prosecution of all prescribed leaders of groups, including the LET, JEM, Al Qaeda, and the Taliban. By adding six more items to the list on amending its Money Laundering Act and cracking down on other businesses involved in money laundering and other terror financing, the FATF has indicated that Pakistan could remain on the grey list for at least another 1 to 2 years. For India, Pakistan's continuance on the list is some comfort, even as it awaits true justice delivered to leaders of groups such as the LET and GEM for attacks, including Mumbai 2611, Parliament 2001, Pathankot and Pulwama, and not just terror financing. However, the process of FATF that has taken a justifiably hard line in Pakistan's case must be checked for overreach, as India faces its mutual evaluation report that has been delayed due to the pandemic. New Delhi should expect that Pakistan will push for a critical investigation of India's AML or CFT regime. And with the FATF announcing a new focus on extreme right wing terrorism, it is clear that there will be more political aspects to its technical scrutiny of countries in the future. Caution and optimism. Third wave may be weaker than second, but vaccination preventive steps must stay high. India, with the second highest number of cases globally and third highest deaths, is seeing about 50,000 cases being added every day. Though on a decline, the second wave is far from over, and several states are relaxing lockdown restrictions, which experts say may be seeding the ground for a potential third wave. In this context, a mathematical modeling study led by the scientists at the Indian Council of Medical Research and the Imperial College London shows a very optimism. Will a potential third wave be as devastating as the second? The scientists attempt to find out, and the answer is no. For that to happen, a trifecta of extreme scenarios has to converge. One, over a third of those who have been infected in the past year must entirely lose their immunity. Second, an emerging variant of the virus must have a reproductive rate over 4.5, or every infected person should be passing on the virus to at least 4 to 5 others. And finally, both of these must occur almost close to when the second wave has almost extinguished itself. This is beyond the transmissibility seen so far. A third wave could be significantly buffered by expanding vaccination were vaccines to be rolled out in a way to cover 40% of the population with two doses until August. It could reduce symptomatic incidence by around 55%. Less than 20% of Indians have got at least one dose of the vaccine and only 4% fully vaccinated. The center proposes to vaccinate all adults, about 94.4 crore, by the year end. India's states, which have at various times dealt with unprecedented crisis during the tragedy, now have an estimate of what is needed to tide out their peak phases. In that light, the ICMO's projections can help with ensuring the minimum number of supplies and other infrastructure in the event of an upstick. However, it should not be forgotten that this is, after all, a modeling study. None of India's eminent institutions in the early part of the year forecast the scale and intensity of the second wave. There is also the vexing matter of breakthrough infections, that is, those contracting the infection in spite of being vaccinated. Sporadic studies in India suggest that this percentage of infection is small, though there is still no clarity on the tracking on the real-world effectiveness of vaccines in the light of variants such as Delta and Delta Plus. There is also so far no theoretical limit on how infections the coronavirus can become. The ICMR's analysis thus should not taken as a forecast, but rather a guidance and a reminder that along with vaccination, masks, avoiding crowds, and physical distancing will remain the main defense against the virus for the foreseeable future.